subscribe.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday Stream, the stream I do on Sundays, because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well this beautiful Sunday morning. Let me get into the hellos first, and then I'll explain for those of you that are either joining late or you didn't see last week's episode what's going on. Mike Savage, good morning. Funtime Bats, Rotten Corpse, Chicago Mike, Noah Asensio, Scanner Daffley, Mike R. Let's see who else. Keeverdam, hello. Old Guy Gamer. Let's see. Beachy Cogito, good morning. Darth Mando. And I think that's everybody I see. If I missed you, or if you're lurking, or if you're in the future, good morning. Also, please be sure to set your eyes up to the top of the chat box to the GoFundMe links provided by Keeverdam. Thank you, Keeverdam. To our friends Angry Illinoisian and his kitten. If you have a couple of bucks to spare, they, their friends, and families could certainly use your help. So thank you for that ahead of time. So today is a continuation from last week. So for those of you that weren't here last week, you can find the episode, on my channel. We looked at two segments from a U.S. Chamber of Commerce Summit on Diversity and Inclusion. The first segment was from a couple of ladies from a accounting firm and like a building contracting firm. And they started out their segment mentioning that they gave all of these resources and opportunities to business owners and businesses that were of underrepresented groups, specifically Black and Latinx, I think it was, or thereabouts. And then they kind of wandered away from mentioning that too strongly to started talking about contractors and opportunities and things. They were playing it kind of cagey, as most diversity officers do. They have to sort of reluctantly confess that what they're doing is racially discriminatory, but then they try to get away from it as quickly as possible and just talk about all the benefits that they give out. Great, fine, whatever. Well, the second segment is where things got really interesting because we had our diversity officer from AllState Insurance, and she had no boundaries. She had no filter. She came right out and said exactly what they're doing, and boy, howdy, did it sound interesting. The most interesting part of her segment, the one that stuck out to me the most, and which I'm curious to hear if she says today or mentions, is that apparently, according to her, AllState has an internal company dashboard program. And part of this dashboard program, which is accessible and used by, as she said, most of the high-level managers and vice presidents and so on, part of this dashboard is to monitor the amount of Black and Latinx individuals they have employed there. And they use this dashboard, if I remember correctly, she did use the word accountable, but somewhere in there, they use this dashboard to monitor and measure how many people in their company they have that fall into these two racial demographics. Which I have to ask, as I always do. Well, if you find yourself in a too low a percentage of a particular type of person, how do you guys solve for that problem at AllState? I really don't know. And is that legal? Well, anyway, but all that aside, you can go watch that episode if you'd like after this or during this. If you're watching into the future, you can always pause or come back either way. During the course of her segment, our AllState executive mentioned that she had recently testified in front of Congress on a specific finance committee hearing about diversity in the insurance industry. She didn't say too much more about what she said at her testimony, simply that she gave it, that apparently the Financial Services Committee was holding a hearing on diversity in the insurance industry, invited a whole bunch of insurance companies to show up, and very few, if any, did, but AllState volunteered to show up, even though they weren't invited. Something like that. I'm assuming we'll hear about that in the course of today's video. Now, as an editorial note, what I have done is I took the full committee hearing, which is about an hour and 40 some odd minutes long, and I just visually scanned through the footage to find only those segments pertaining to the AllState representative. Okay, so we're going to be seeing excerpts of the full committee hearing that covered just the parts where the AllState executive was speaking. Now, in some cases, I've kind of guesstimated where the representative or the congressperson was asking the question and where her testimony stopped. I just kind of followed the footage. So I don't know how disjointed this might be, but I tried to isolate a direct question asked of her and her response, except for the very beginning where we get the introduction by the chairwoman and the opening remarks by some of the other politicians. So anyway, that is to say, at various points, suddenly the footage will cut off and the screen will go black for a couple seconds, and then we'll start in with the next segment. So that's how this is going to work. I try to whittle it down to just the AllState lady. But if you'd like to see the entire session in its entirety, link to that is in the description of this video. So with all that as preamble, a couple more hellos. Shadowclaw, Bridget, good morning. Resolute Germ, Cannibalistic Wizard, Jack Frost, and I think, Blakester. Hello, Blakester. I think that's everybody. I think I've mentioned everyone at least once now. If I missed you, I apologize. You can shout at me in the chat. But let's get started. The whole segmented video comes out just over 34 minutes, and I'll go for an hour and a half in real time, though I don't know why I wouldn't get through this whole thing, but you never know. They might say some crazy stuff. So anyway, Beachy Cogito, background music. Well, here's the thing. The background music option on StreamYard has a tendency to distort my audio. It interferes with it in some way. Playing it in the course of also broadcasting my voice does some crazy stuff to the quality. I don't like it. I'd rather just be able to be heard clearly rather than sound like I'm watery or having distortion or something. So that's why I'm cutting out the background music for now. I've sent a note or a question/suggestion to the StreamYard team directly that maybe it's something that can be tweaked. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm going to lay off the background music for the time being. So there you go. Anyway, let's begin and see where we go.
The subcommittee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to declare a recess of the subcommittee at any time.
You guys hear that okay? I did boost the audio quite a bit and clean it up because it was a little murky when I first got it. So let me know if you can hear that okay. Let's see. Programming note also, and I'll mention this at the end of the stream as well. Tuesday, I plan on sometime in the afternoon-ish picking up a part 2 of the stream I did yesterday on Saturday regarding the podcast from the NAIS, National Association of Independent Schools, on introducing DEI into the classroom. Got about 3/4 of the way through that video, and I needed to call it quits because I was hanging out with Sister Scribe. But there will be a part 2 I'm planning on Tuesday. Keep an eye on my Twitter for notifications on that. Okay.
Without objection. Members of the full committee not on this subcommittee are authorized to participate in today's hearing.
Mm-hmm.
This hearing is entitled,
Yes.
A Review of Diversity and Inclusion at America's Largest Investment Firms.
Oh, investment firms. I thought it was about the insurance industry. Maybe I have that off.
Now I recognize myself for 4 minutes, but before the clock starts, let me just say to the witnesses and the audiences, due to the business of the House, the time had to be changed for our committee, so we lost several of our members due to leadership and other committees. But I assure you that the ranking member and I and our colleagues virtually and here will give you our full attention. Now, I recognize myself for 4 minutes.
I recognize myself too on a daily basis when I wake up and I go, who am I? Oh, that's right. Who am I here? If anybody in the chat recognizes the line, who am I here? I think that's the line. If you know what movie that's from, you're a total nerd.
To give an opening statement. Today, we are here to discuss diversity and inclusion in America's largest insurance companies.
Oh, insurance. I thought you said investment.
When I became chair of the subcommittee, I made a commitment to investigate the state of diversity and inclusion in the financial services sector.
Okay.
Not only because the composition of the industry should mirror diversity of this country, but also because study after study after study has shown that diverse and inclusive companies are more productive and more profitable.
Oh, okay. Well, How do you define diversity, and how would you suggest you achieve the goal of true diversity? Always my question. It remains so for our politician here.
We started by looking at banks and investment firms earlier in this Congress, and we discovered that women and minorities are unrepresented at these institutions.
Unrepresented. Women and minorities. There are no women and there are no minorities in insurance companies. Oh, okay.
This hearing, the third in the series, takes a closer look at insurance companies.
Okay.
Think about it. While no one is required to have a bank account or make investments, most people are required to have some type of insurance. For example, you need car insurance to drive a car or mortgage insurance to buy a house. The insurance industry touches the lives of nearly every American and has assets totaling nearly $6 trillion.
So what?
That is why earlier in this year, Chairwoman Waters and I sent letters to 27 of the largest property, casualty, and life insurance company requesting data on their diversity and inclusion policies and practices.
Okay. Why? What does that have to do with anything?
I am happy to report that all 27 companies submitted data in response to our request. After months of analysis, the committee staff published a report earlier this week entitled Diversity and Inclusion, including America's largest insurance companies' accountability.
You're going to hold them accountable. Okay, again, what does diversity mean to you? And depending on the data sent to you by insurance company X, if you are not pleased with that data, how are you going to hold the company accountable? What does that look like? What is the punishment? What is the goal that you want them to achieve? And how do you suggest they achieve it? If your big concern, by any chance, is race and gender. You're the one that brought up gender and race, women and minorities. Okay. If those are the metrics that you're concerned with, how would you suggest the company solve for that problem?
This comprehensive report evaluates diversity in 6 different categories: overall workforce, executive leadership, CEOs, board diversity, suppliers, and investment assets. The results were disappointing.
Oh, they were disappointing. Okay, how many of the wrong skin colors and or genitals did you see?
The results were disappointing.
In what way?
We found that the largest insurance companies are lagging behind in the same things we measured at banks and investment firms. On an average, only 30% of the employees at the largest insurance companies are people of color, compared to just over 40% at banks and investment firms.
How does that compare with the overall population demographics of the country? No, seriously, you want the industries to reflect the country that they're in. You want them to reflect the population of America. Okay. What is, in average terms, the population demographics of this country, and how does that compare to what you found? Is it similar? Is it a grand disparity? But let's say that it is. Let's say it's some grand disparity off the population demographics of the country. Again, what do you suggest to these firms that they do to quote unquote improve those numbers if the only metric you're looking at is race?
Of equal concern is the finding that women and minority representation is concentrated at the lower level and drops significantly the higher you go up in the corporate ladder.
Okay, so genitals and skin color should be considered as attributes in which to give someone a promotion, right? If you have to decide to promote people, you don't weigh against their merit first and foremost. You weigh against their race and or gender. Because honestly, I do not know what else you are suggesting be done. I can't wait to hear your rationale for what it is that you want these companies to do and how you want them to do it and how that measures up against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Really, really curious.
For example, 77% of administrative support employees identified as women compared to 34% at the executive level and 28.5% at the board of directors level.
Well, let's ask a question, shall we? Is there anything in life that might occur in a woman's, I don't know, decision-making process as to whether or not they want to dedicate the bulk of their life and time to work versus, oh, I don't know, something else? On average, is there anything that might occur that might take time away from a woman's career that they might not achieve the same level of executive loftiness as a man? Can you imagine anything?
Level. Although some firms are doing better in certain categories,
Oh.
none are meeting expectations in every category.
Oh.
This report covers that there is still plenty of work for us to do, and I am proud that we are starting to work today with this report and hearing.
What work do you suggest be done? I know I'm going to be a broken record on this. This is a problem, all right? How do you suggest that problem be solved? If those are the metrics you're concerned with, what do you want companies to hire and promote on the basis of?
I am thankful for our witnesses here today and note that the CEOs who were invited to testify declined.
Uh-oh.
Let the record show that I am going to invite all 27 CEOs to meet on a Zoom with me, and certainly will invite the ranking member. This
Zoom?
country is rich with diversity, a diverse reservoir of talent, and it
No. You're not talking about talent. You're not talking about talent. You never brought up talent. You never brought up merit. You never brought up skill, education, passion, nothing. You were concerned with genitals and skin color. Stop running away from it. Anything you say after your primary concern is genitals and skin color are irrelevant. Irrelevant. If you make anything other than merit a priority, if you make merit a secondary concern at best, you've already lost the game. Okay? Stop it. You're not fooling anybody who's listening. A couple more hellos real quick. Johnny Hellcat, good morning. Lexi Mads is here. I guess I can begin again. England DG, good morning. Simon Willikins. And I think that's everybody I see. If I haven't said hello, please let me know in the chat that you're here, even if you're lurking, or unless you like to lurk, I suppose. Maybe that's your thing. Maybe you just like being creepy. I like being creepy.
It is time that we start harnessing that resource to make our institutions stronger and better. So let me just say, there is no one solution to the problem of diversity and equity.
Oh, no, there is one solution. There is one solution. Hiring on the basis of gender and or race, as you've outlined. That's it. That's it. You're only concerned with the quota. You're only concerned with the percentages of people on those elements. That's it. That's the solution. You know that's the solution. Hey, what? Good morning, Ost Sand as well.
We all have to work together and learn from each other and do our part to achieve a more inclusive system that offers opportunities to all.
Right.
I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, my colleague, my friend, and it is my honor to yield 5 minutes to Congresswoman Ann Wagner from Missouri for 5 minutes for her opening statement.
All right.
I thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I want to thank our witnesses that are here in person and virtually for testifying before our subcommittee today. Today's panel includes witnesses representing multiple parts of the insurance industry. I'd like to specifically welcome a fellow Missourian, Clara Lindley Myers, who is the director of the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance.
Ooh.
Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing all of your testimony and taking this opportunity to learn more about the achievements being made within your industry. While the insurance industry has made great strides over the past few years to improving overall workforce diversity, Republicans agree that insurance companies can build upon the progress that has been made to improve diversity, particularly within its leadership.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, how would you suggest that be done? You mean promoting people because of what they look like? That's it. You want people in positions of authority, first and foremost, so that the aesthetic matches your desires. That's it. That's it, isn't it?
Republicans also agree with certain recommendations made in the majority report.
Oh, yeah?
And indeed, many of the companies sampled have already implemented some of these recommendations.
What are the recommendations? What recommendations were made to change or improve things? Are you going to tell us? Please tell us.
In particular, the majority recommended that companies partner with historically Black colleges and universities to build talent pipelines.
Okay. So you start your discriminatory practice at the front end of the pipeline, right? We're going to focus our recruitment efforts at places where we can certainly find and expect to find a particular racial demographic. We're going to start our... How does that square with civil rights laws? Huh? How does that square? Oh, well, you see, we made sure our entire talent pool had the odds of containing nothing but the types of people we need to make the aesthetic of our workforce match the requirements of Congress and other companies. So when we decided to hire somebody, when we decided to hire or offer someone a job, the odds were, regardless of who we chose, they'd fit into the required racial demographic. That's good. That's a good idea to you? That sounds fair? Okay.
100% of the sample companies already do so. Next, to develop workforce diversity goals that are made public. 96% of the sample companies already do so.
Okay.
Thirdly, routinely evaluate existing diversity and inclusion programs to ensure effectiveness and efficiency of programs, and 92% already do so.
Okay. The efficiency and effectiveness. The effectiveness at, okay. Again, and I think I mentioned this a stream or two ago, I'm going to be very curious to find out if the Supreme Court rules against affirmative action in colleges, whether or not that has an effect on the DEI apparatus in general or the whole industry at large. Because if you listen to the oral arguments that took place a couple of weeks ago in the Supreme Court in favor of affirmative action in schools, you would be forgiven for thinking, if you watch my channel for any particular period of time, you'd be forgiven for thinking you're listening to somebody discussing their DEI program in their company. When you listen to the lawyers for Harvard arguing for affirmative action and their justifications for it. Because like I say, if I took some random clip of the lawyers arguing for affirmative action and told you, here's a diversity officer from Corporation X talking about their DEI program, you likely, just based on the rhetoric and the arguments alone, would not be able to tell the difference. So if the Supreme Court ends up ruling that entire thing, that entire justification is unconstitutional, I am just dying to find out what effect that'll have on all of this.
Have a lead diversity officer who can inform strategic discussions across the C-suite. 96.2% already do so.
And what effect does that have? What does a chief diversity officer actually do? Listen to the consultants, listen to all the panel discussions. They have no idea.
I'm glad to see some progress that the private sector has already made in these categories without government intervention.
Sure.
In addition, there is bipartisan support for training academies and that educate employees on job opportunities and match graduates with mentors and sponsors to support their career goals.
What if those individuals don't match your color criteria?
These best practices will be especially effective in combating the challenges that companies face in increasing diversity, specifically within their leadership ranks.
Right. It's all about who's in charge. You want to make sure that at the top you have people that look right. Okay.
As compared with overall workforce diversity, which is much closer to mirroring the general population. However, I do want to reiterate my concern and opposition to any legislative efforts that impose mandatory reporting regimes on companies that are diverse in their size, location, mission, strengths, and challenges.
Oh,
It's clear that while diversity and inclusion within the industry has greatly improved, insurance companies still have much room for growth in several
Okay.
categories.
so
Companies that are still facing challenges can learn from the successes of their peers and implement similar strategies. I look forward to learning more today about the best practices and strategies within the insurance industry.
oh, I'm interested in learning about the best practices too. Sorry, the best practices. What?
I thank the chair and I yield back.
Thank you. Now I am honored to recognize the chairwoman of the full Financial Services Committee, a longtime leader, advocate for D&I, the gentlewoman from California, Congresswoman Maxine Waters.
Oh, Maxine Waters. Oh, I just saw Maxine Waters on a video from, it was Upper Echelon. If you guys haven't heard about Upper Echelon, it used to be Upper Echelon Gaming, but sort of like Kira TV, he's moved or evolved over the last few years into covering cryptocurrencies and financial scams and things like that. And he just put out a video, I think yesterday, where he was discussing just how entwined the money of the FTX crypto exchange was with politics in this country. And specifically how Sam Bankman-Fried, the head of FTX, and now one of the most hated people in finance at present, just how chummy he was and has been with politicians, specifically Maxine Waters, chairwoman of the Financial Services Committee, and how many times he's been photographed with her and pictures of her blowing him kisses. So yeah, Maxine Waters, everybody.
Thank you so very much, Chair Beatty. I'm proud that we're releasing a third in an unprecedented series of reports examining diversity and inclusion within the financial services sector.
Yes.
This time, we have focused on the diversity of our nation's largest property and casualty and life insurance companies.
Yes.
The insurance industry is a unique sector of financial services that has had much less federal oversight than the rest of the financial services industry because it is primarily regulated by the states. But insurance products are equally, if not more ubiquitous, in the everyday lives of consumers. While no one is required to have a bank account or make investments, it is often a requirement to obtain certain types of insurance.
We already heard this. Did you just crib your notes from the First Lady?
To drive a car, or obtain a mortgage, or rent a home. The committee's report makes clear that these companies still have much work to do to improve transparency and accountability. So I look forward to discussing the findings of this report. And thank you, Chair Beatty. I yield back.
Well, at least it was brief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we welcome the testimony of our distinguished witnesses. First, we have Eloisa Domingo, who is the Vice President of Human Resources and Chief Inclusive Diversity and Equity Officer at the AllState Corporation.
Here's our lady, Eloisa. All right, so again, just for those of you joining late, I kept the entire introduction intact just for the sake of context. From here on out, everything we're going to see are going to be excerpts of what I found to be just those instances where Eloisa Domingo was asked a direct question by a politician, and she gave her answer. I've excluded all the other people because, well, they don't matter to what was occurring in last Sunday's stream. Again, if you'd like to see the whole Financial Services Committee session, links in the description. So I don't know how long each segment is, but at various points, the video is going to suddenly cut out into a black screen, and then we'll know that the next segment is coming. So hopefully I got everything in context for her testimony, but we'll see as we go.
Next, we have Dr. Leroy Nunnery II, who is the president of Evolution Advisors.
Okay.
And he is joining us virtually, I believe.
Okay.
Next, we have Clara Lindley Myers, who is the Director of the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance, here on behalf of the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. She was also mentioned by our ranking member. And next we have Kimberly Ross, the Senior Vice President for Federal Relations at the American Council of Life Insurers. And I would like to take the personal privilege to also say she is also someone who started this journey of D&I with me. Welcome to see you in your new capacity.
D&I. You guys are behind the times by about 5 years, guys. It's DEI now, or DEIB, depending. It's not D&I anymore. They added the E. All right.
And finally, we have Barrett Waybo, who is the specialist in financial economics at the Congressional Research Service.
Okay.
Witnesses are reminded that their oral testimony will be limited to 5 minutes. You should be able to see a timer that will indicate how much time you have left. I would ask that you be mindful of the timer so we can be respectful of both you as witnesses and the committee members' time. Without objection, your written statement will be made part of the record.
Yes.
Ms. Domingo, you are now recognized for 5 minutes to give an oral presentation on your testimony.
All right. Here we go.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Beatty, Ranking Member Wagner, Chairwoman Waters, Ranking Member McHenry, and other distinguished members of the committee. My name is Eloisa Domingo. I am the Vice President of Human Resources and Chief Inclusive Diversity and Equity Officer at AllState.
Oh, you changed it up. Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, IDE. Okay. Yep. So this is our lady. This is our lady from last week. All right. So tell us about the dashboard. Tell us about what you're doing to increase your population, workforce, and leadership on the basis of race. Let's go.
Before I begin, I want to share my gratitude to you, Chairs Waters and Beatty, for creating this survey and subsequent processes. At AllState, one of our leadership competencies is challenge ideas, which essentially means pushing the status quo with the intention of making things better.
Oh.
I also wish to thank everyone who worked tirelessly on the details of today's hearing. I'm humbled and grateful for this opportunity to be here and testify as you review diversity and inclusion at America's largest companies, insurance companies. I've been in the field of diversity for over 20 years, serving in leadership positions within academics, pharmaceuticals, law enforcement, and healthcare.
How is that possible? You're not white. I thought this whole thing was, oh wait.
I've been honored to lead and build the strategic work at places like Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, Astellas Pharma, Johns Hopkins Medicine, Indiana University, Miami University, Bucknell University, and now at the AllState Corporation.
Good gravy. You've been all over the place. I guess I'm just a rare individual these days. I've had essentially one job at one company for the bulk of my adulthood. But I know that doesn't happen that very often these days, but okay.
But I'm more proud of being a single mom.
Oh.
I am the firstborn daughter of immigrants from the Philippines who moved here in the 1970s.
Yes.
I'm raising 4 biracial boys. I have 2 sets of twins.
Why? Oh, right. I forgot. Race really matters to you. Okay.
My 14-year-old boys, I know, and my 9-year-old boys. And for all those reasons, I pursued this work, or maybe this work pursued me.
Yeah, I looked up a little bit about Miss Domingo before this. She's actually mother to 2 sets of twins. 2 sets of twins. That's, I mean, everything else is, yeah, single mom raising 4 kids, 2 sets of twins. That is a Herculean effort in and of itself. So credit where credit is due.
It's why I'm happy to be here today to support this very important conversation. So at AllState, we use the term inclusive diversity and equity, or IDE, on purpose.
Yeah.
More than 20 years ago, we turned inclusion into an adjective because diversity is really nothing without an inclusive environment in which to thrive.
Or you're dodging the major questions about what actually constitutes diversity. Or, I don't know, maybe there's something poetic, the Ides of March, maybe.
And that's what AllState believes, that everyone deserves to live a life well protected. Everyone has a right to participate and prosper in an equitable society. AllState is one of the largest providers of protection to consumers in the United States, protecting their cars, their homes, phones, personal property, lives, and identities, with 172.8 million policies in force and $39.5 billion of premiums over the last 12 months.
And why do you consider race? Why do you consider race as important enough to hire people on the basis of? Why do you consider something that's a non-determinative factor? If you care about people, skin color shouldn't matter at all. Should it?
We also know that true diversity change is a journey and requires clear planning.
Mm-hmm.
Our multi-year IDE corporate strategy was built with many stakeholders and focuses on 4 pillars:
Okay.
business practices, people, culture, and community. And these pillars clarify our drive and leadership accountability to comprehensively integrate IDE into our daily practices and our daily behaviors.
What does that look like?
Under these 4 pillars, we have achieved milestones. Our
Like?
people diversity meets or exceeds external benchmarks with
People diversity external benchmarks. Are you talking about quotas?
women making up approximately 57% of our total workforce.
Oh, okay. So women are overrepresented in your workforce. Okay. And do you want to mention, I don't know, education, work experience, skill, anything?
42% of our employees identify as racially or ethnically diverse. 71% of our leadership, which is our directors and above, identify as female or a person of color.
Oh, how do those percent, 71% female or a person of color. Well, how do those percentages hash out? Right. Okay. And what IDE practices did you institute into your hiring and promotion procedures to achieve those goals? Please do tell me, what other solution could I possibly imagine except that you were violating the Civil Rights Act of 1964? If this is your concern, if those are your goals, if you're giving percentages to people on the basis of their race and or gender, how did you achieve those goals? Seriously, honestly, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm just a schmuck with an English degree. But I am at a loss to understand how it is that these companies, any company, gets away with this stuff without some serious questions being asked about their hiring practices and their promotion practices and how those square with federal law or even state law. You know, there are plenty of state laws that deal with discrimination in hiring as well. How does this work? Honestly, I'm being sincere here. I'm not being facetious. I'm not joking around. If I am just being an idiot on this, if someone in the audience, or if you know somebody who's a lawyer or something, can give me a clear answer as to how this is not at least implicative of major civil rights violations, how this is legal, how this is legit in what is being suggested here, please tell me. Because if I've been wasting my time and all of my bewilderment and concern over the last 5 years over literally nothing, if I'm just ignorant of some clause in the law, some loophole, some whatever it is that says this is okay, I would love to know. I'd love to know that I've wasted my entire time on YouTube on this subject. You know, it would set my mind at ease when I hear things like this. At least I'd have an idea. But I just can't square this. I never have been able to, and I certainly can't do so now. If somebody's got an answer, by all means, let me know.
And 60% of AllState's independent directors bring gender, race, or ethnic diversity to the board. And we provide guidance and accountability to ensure diverse talent is a part of our candidate slates.
No, you don't care about talent. Or if you do care about talent, do tell me, what inherent talent is there to someone's race? What inherent talent is there to someone's gender? And if you have an answer to both of those questions, I got news for you. You're a racist and you're a sexist. I don't know what else to tell you when I hear something like that. You're going to associate talent with an attribute that is non-determinative of character or ability. Well, you tell me, how do you assess someone on their aesthetics for quality of service to your company? Please tell me.
We are a founding member of 110, a 10-year effort to train, hire, and promote 1 million Black Americans who don't have a four-year degree and who are making below a family-sustaining wage.
Why don't you take the race element out of that? Right? Why don't you take the race element? Why don't you give opportunities to people on the basis of life circumstance and not their skin color? If someone is, because of circumstances in their life, undereducated and in a poor tax bracket and they need a break, why don't you give it on the basis of those elements alone? Why consider race?
This is part of our acknowledgement of the wealth gap in minority communities and that Black families are hit the hardest. So we've dedicated ourselves to pursue equity in our people practices.
Equity through racial discrimination. Okay.
A part of AllState's legacy is to challenge convention. We did this on Wall Street in 2020 when we became the first corporate issuer to select exclusively minority, women, and veteran-owned firms to lead a $1.2 billion bond sale.
Veterans, again, was she the one that brought up veterans again last week when I talked about that? It's always veterans. They always retreat to veterans, and they include veteran status on the same level as gender and race, as though any of these things are comparable to being a veteran. But they always bring in veterans. You know, they always bring in the sympathy gap there. They're using the status of being a veteran as a pawn to insulate the absolute yuck of what they're suggesting otherwise. I think I said it last week as well. I'm not a veteran. I have veterans in my family. I can't speak directly to this, but when I hear veterans being used as an offhand, third option, casual mention amongst all this other nonsense, to me, it seems insulting. It seems insulting. If you're going to give opportunities to people on the basis of their circumstance, on the basis of their service, then do so on that alone. You throw in race or gender as somehow being on equal footing as being a veteran? What are you saying? Good gravy.
And this led to other companies pursuing similar bond deals with diverse-owned companies. And since 2004, we have tripled our annual spend with diverse suppliers to $4.7 billion.
Okay, so you make financial resource decisions on the basis of race, of the owner of the business. If a business owner is of race X, that is the first consideration as to whether or not you provide these opportunities or these resources. I seem to remember there are some laws out there about financial institutions implementing a racial test in who they will or will not help. I seem to recall there's something in the law about that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
At AllState, we are constantly looking for new ways to expand our IDE efforts. Under this strategy, we will expand our definition and operations of diversity to improve the way we support women, the LGBTQ+ population, veterans and military families, those with disabilities, and many other diverse communities in a meaningful way. And this is why I volunteered to be here today.
Why wasn't veterans your first and only example? That wasn't your priority. You didn't talk about veterans. You were like halfway through your talk before you even mentioned veterans. If you're so concerned about veterans, why is that not your top priority, regardless of what they look like? On the basis of their service alone. Why wasn't that? If you did that, but no, it's about first race, then situation. Veterans, whatever, afterthought.
To share my recommendations, my perspectives on inclusive diversity and equity in the insurance industry. And I thank you again for the opportunity to address the committee today, and I look forward to engaging in a discussion together.
Thank you very much, Ms. Domingo.
Okay, so this is the end of the first segment. We're jumping some period of time in the hearing to get to the next one. And again, I hope that I edited things correctly, that we get the question being asked of her from whatever politician's engaging, and then her whole answer. So if we come in the middle of a question or something, that's my fault. So we'll just take it as we go.
The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Timmons, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today. Ms. Domingo, let's start with you, please. What would you say that you and your company are most proud of in the audit results, and where would you say the most work remains to further diversify your workforce?
Yes. Good question.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Timmons. I would say that for AllState, we are probably most proud of in 2020, we created a $1.2 billion bond sale where we worked with minority-owned, veteran-owned, women-owned business enterprises and supported the largest bond sale, independent bond sale at that time.
What was the percentage of businesses where you focused specifically on veteran status? And what were the percentages of companies based on race or gender? Just including veterans doesn't tell us how much help you gave to veterans, right? How did that shake out? That'd be my question as a follow-up.
That lives into our bold action, our commitment to making real change and influencing others to make real change. So we are very, proud of that. And then to your other question, as my colleague mentioned before, we're creating sponsorship and mentorship programs to ensure that our diverse talent at all levels of the organization are seen as proteges. Sponsorship programs also not only support the employee that's being mentored or being sponsored, but it also supports the sponsor, him or herself, to be more engaged and accountable for moving diversity numbers.
I have no idea what that's supposed to mean. Hold yourself accountable for moving diversity numbers. Okay, how do you suggest you move those numbers? What do you do in your procedures and processes to move those numbers on the ground, at the office space, in your hiring or your promotion practices?
Sure, thank you. I serve in the Air Force, and the military has been grappling with diversity and inclusion and trying to make the military and every group of decision makers at every level reflect the gender and racial diversity of the country. I think that's a very good objective. I think everybody can agree to that. So
no, I'd rather have people in charge that know what they're doing. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what their genitals are. I don't care who they sleep with. Are they knowledgeable in the necessities to fulfill the job requirements? Especially when it comes to the military. Are you an experienced military veteran? Do you know what you're talking about? Yes or no? The answer is no. Why are you there? If the first consideration is what you look like, I think we've taken several steps backwards. Right? Do you want skill and knowledge, or do you want window dressing? I know what I'd prefer overall. If I only ever heard of names of generals and never saw pictures of them, but I at least had an idea that they knew what they were doing, I wouldn't care. Isn't that what we're trying to get to? Isn't that the ideal, where those things are irrelevant? That doesn't matter? But you guys are making it matter all over again. And I don't understand why. Except that you're all scared of being called names, I guess.
So the question becomes, how do we get from where we are now, which is not reflective of the makeup of our society, and where we want to be without disadvantaging people that have also had challenging socioeconomic backgrounds that are not diverse? It becomes an issue, particularly in the military, because we track everything. And when there's promotion opportunities, it often leaves people feeling like they have been left out because they are not diverse.
Yeah. Well, okay. Credit to him. He's stretching out the question too long. He's giving too much padding to it. He's giving her plenty of opportunities to prevaricate. But it's an excellent question. Now that we've determined what diverse stands for, how do you square the circle of discrimination against people on the basis of their race and gender in the negative?
Either in race or in gender. Is this a challenge in your business environment? And I'm going to open up to the rest of the witnesses. It's just something that we have been working on in the military, and it is a lingering issue.
Let's see how she answers.
Ms. Domingo, I'll start with you. Is that something that y'all deal with on a regular basis? The conversation of merit versus diversity inclusion?
It is a real conversation at AllState, and it is a critical conversation. One of the things that we are doing is ensuring that we actually talk about it. So
What?
talking with our managers, talking with our hiring managers particularly, making sure that we have education about this. I think one of the reasons why some of that continued perception is ongoing is because some of these conversations are actually not happening where some of the decisions are taking place. So that's one of the things. So I would say, yes, this is ongoing for
Ongoing? Okay, so not putting merit at the top of the decision-making process. You're not putting merit at the top of the decision-making process, correct? That's what your entire opening statement said to this point. Just admit it. He's asking you in a very roundabout way, do you discriminate against people on the basis of their race and gender for opportunities in favor of other people on the basis of their race or gender? The answer is yes. We already know the answer is yes. Listen to this gobbledygook answer.
for us. And having open and clear dialogue and expectations is something that we're trying to do at AllState.
Yeah, we talk a lot. We talk a lot about it. We have clear expectations. We talk. We talk. We have a lot of conversations, courageous conversations, difficult conversations, uncomfortable conversations. But we're talking about it. Yeah, no answer. No answer. All right, that's the end of segment. I don't know how many segments there are, but just these are breaks.
One issue that we've highlighted in this committee is the importance of data and transparency for understanding where we stand in the state of diversity and inclusion in your industry for today's focus. Ms. Domingo, I'm impressed with the level of transparency shown by AllState through your strategy. Can you talk about the importance of transparency for holding companies accountable in this area? And then I'll have a follow-up to that.
Yeah, we one of the things actually prior to my joining AllState is we did not have talent scorecards or consistent diversity spend scorecards that were being shared with our leadership on a consistent basis.
And she described these scorecards in last week's Sunday stream on her segment at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. The scorecards, yeah, they're basically racial gender checklists. Actually, not even basically, that's what they are. She talks about talent. Every time they mention talent, it is this in-universe euphemism for does this person fit within the racial and or gender requirements that we have. That's it. It's checkbox, literally checkboxes. That's the scorecard.
We've incepted that now on a monthly basis. All of the leadership see their talent scorecard, their diversity numbers, as well as their spend. We also coach on a weekly basis, actually moving those numbers. So the level of transparency is very high.
How do you move those numbers? What actions do you require your managers to take to move those numbers? I am dying to know the answer to that question.
And we're actually incepting other databases that are accessible to leadership from director and above to actually access their data at any point in time so that they can really use that information in real time and change behavior.
Change behavior? Like?
People paying attention to the data that you're sharing.
They are. Yeah.
And yet I want to contrast something. The report by the committee found that there's been little progress made in the insurance industry as a whole over the last 5 years. If you take a look at some of the very top lines from this report, 5 years. And we've been talking about this for more than 5 years. And this committee under this leadership has just been doing extraordinary work.
They've been doing extraordinary work, yet nothing's been changing for 5 years?
Very little movement. So we're all talking about it. We all think it's the right way to go. What progress has AllState made? And you did lift the bond. So beyond that, what progress have you made? But where do you see you have absolute barriers? Where are you not being successful that you're focused on?
Yeah.
So right now we have 71%. We're proud that 71% of our directors and above identify as female or people of color. Where we see a lot of opportunity is what we call the frozen middle. So our middle management, this is where our women and people of color numbers are below where we want them to be.
And so how are you attempting to solve for that problem?
So we have a lot of diversity on either side of the spectrum. So what we're really doing is making sure that that we pay attention to our pipelining, we pay attention to more of our retention efforts.
Pipelining, okay. What are you doing in your pipelining to change those numbers? What are you doing in your retention efforts specifically? If your areas of concern are race and gender, what are you testing people on the basis of, I wonder? How is this legal?
Working more and synthesizing a lot of our systems. A lot of our systems are kind of siloed at this point around diversity. So a lot of people are doing a lot of great things, but they're not optimized to really focus on some of our goals like this. So that's what we're really going to be focusing on.
Yeah,
Thank you to all our
siloed.
witness. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
That's it? Okay.
Ms. Domingo, I have a specific question for you. You talked about the frozen middle. And you talked about how at the intro level, you get a lot of diverse candidates. At the upper management, you get them, and then this frozen middle. When you talk about the candidates in upper management, do you have a sense of what percentage of them were internally promoted versus externally recruited? So is it people are hitting the frozen middle, dropping out, and then you're recruiting more people in? Or is it something else? Does that make sense as a question?
It does make, this question does make sense. I don't know, Mr. Gonzalez, if I have that information readily available, I can certainly get that and turn it in for the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you're hiring externally on the basis of, I don't know, things that really shouldn't be hired on the basis of in order to pad your numbers, that looks a lot worse than if you promote somebody from within that you can say, well, at least they're, experienced in the company, they've got some tenure and so on and so forth. Because if your chief concern is, does our leadership, quote unquote, reflect the society around us, and your considerations there are just aesthetics, well, how are you managing that? Thank you, Keldrig. They identify as women and people of color. What did you do? Ask your white male board to lie about what they are? They identify as women and people of color. Well, are they? Is it just optional? Can I just fill out a survey and just say? It's such a weird way to phrase it, like identify as. I mean, I identify as Julius Caesar. Does that get me something? Does that mean anything? What is the integrity of your data if you're going off of what people just tell you is a rumor or something, or just decide like one day, oh, I'm this, I'm that? How accurate are your numbers? It's so bizarre to me, this entire thing. Year over year, I hear the same things over and over, and it never becomes any clearer to me how it makes any sense to any person who's thinking about fairness or the law or the history of civil rights in this country.
I just think it would be interesting because I think it could highlight maybe where the fallouts are. And staying with you, Ms. Domingo, in your testimony, you said AllState has launched recruiting strategies with 12 HBCUs and 12 Hispanic services institutions. I think it's a great idea.
You think it's a great idea? You think it's a great idea discriminating at the front of the talent pipeline on the basis of race? Oh, okay. I mean, if you say so.
While it's in its early stages, how has this partnership played out so far? Sort of a status update.
Oh, softball.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of our, you're right. This is really in the infancy. We actually relaunched some of these partnerships. As I mentioned earlier, when I joined AllState, we had a lot of great things that were going on, but they were kind of all over the place. So inventorizing them in my first year was one of the things, and then optimizing on what it is that we're doing. Current state, we are looking at what undergraduate and graduate programs that HBCUs offer and tying them with where some of our deficit areas are, like tech or data, for example. One of the things that we're really
some of your deficit areas. Deficit on the basis of race? Yeah, I put this forward a long time ago. How do you avoid the legal challenges in most civil rights actions when it comes to this, right? I tried to think of how could you try to mitigate your risk when it comes to somebody suing you or bringing a lawsuit on the basis of, say, racial discrimination. Well, the first thing you have to do is avoid there being any question at all that you're being racially discriminatory, right? And so most times it comes from the classic in American, lore, you're discriminating against someone because they're not white. Okay. So how do you avoid that? Well, you have to have somebody there who's going to sue you in the first place because you didn't hire them or you did hire somebody else on the basis of their race. How do you dodge that? You make sure that the entire candidate pool coming in for any particular job has everybody you could possibly need on a visual basis to fit the mold of what you're trying to get as far as demographic. That way, no matter who you hire, no one else can say, well, you discriminated against me on the basis of my race. Well, if everybody who was up for the job looked like you, they have no argument, right? There's no member of a class action lawsuit if you can't prove that they discriminated against you on the basis of race. And if there was nobody in the talent pool who looked different than everybody else, then they've got no basis for complaint because they weren't discriminated against on the basis of their race. So if you start at the very front of the pipeline, if you put your racial test at the very front, you dodge a lot of possibilities of someone being able to sue you for not giving them a job, for not hiring them because of the way they look. I mean, it's simple. That's the only thing I can think of on a legal basis that makes it a murky area of how they apply this, until you get to things like hiring in for leadership positions, right? Or promotions, the internal stuff. As far as recruitment, I think that's the strategy. I think that's what makes the most sense. You say, we have a job available, but you only let this availability be known to those demographics you want to fill out in your diversity quotas. I think that's it. That's the only thing that makes sense to me on this.
Really proud of is we just partnered with William Blair, and we have an asset management diversity program where we're taking 8 graduates from HBCUs and circulating them throughout AllState with the intent of bringing them on after they intern with us.
That's great.
That's great.
Spent time in technology as well, and this was a strategy we used to get more diverse candidates in our pipeline. It worked incredibly well.
I'm sure it did incredibly well. I'm sure that if your only consideration first and foremost is what someone looks like, and you go after people that look a particular way, and you hire people on the basis of what they look like, yeah, your diversity efforts will be very successful. When you reduce people down to the lowest common denominator and call that a good thing all by its lonesome without any other credibility, yeah, you can achieve great things.
So I commend you for it.
Imagine if any of these people were saying that they were doing this on the basis of someone being white. Just imagine that for a second. Imagine the legitimate firestorm of controversy that would occur if they're saying we're trying to fill out our white numbers. Yeah.
And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. The chairwoman and gentlewoman, Ms. Garcia from Texas, who is the vice chair of this subcommittee on diversity and inclusion, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for bringing this very important topic to the table. You know, after being on this committee for now almost 2 terms, you know, I thought that we had a lot of work to do in the financial services, the banking industry, but after I read your report, and thank you for that work together with the chairwoman, of course, I just thought I didn't know it could be worse. And I think it is. And I think enough people have probably already focused on the employment numbers that I just want to kind of change the tone a little bit and first just say that you all have a lot of work to do. And I hope that we can get together today to look at some concrete actionable changes.
Yes, let's.
Because I think that's what it's going to take, not just coming from us,
Yeah.
but from you with a commitment to really do it.
Yeah.
I want to start by highlighting the lack of Latino leadership in the insurance industry.
Okay, well, how would you suggest that be solved? Again, what is your first concern? Race. Ethnicity. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, what concrete steps do you suggest be taken to solve for that problem?
So as we've seen laid out in the report, Latinos make up 8.8% of the insurance workforce. That's less than 10%.
what's the Latino population in America, demographically speaking? I'm just going to look it up just because I'm curious. Let's see. I mean, I don't know. I'm just curious. Let's see. They add in, okay, 18.9%. Okay, so 18.9%. So if it were to be completely reflective of population numbers, and again, I'm just going off of Census Bureau stuff, quick Google search, but let's just say for the sake of argument, just round up 19%. 19% of the American population is considered Latino, okay, or Hispanic. So the insurance industry needs to increase its Latino population, or leadership population, I should say, by 10%. An additional 10% or so needs to happen for it to everything to be equal. Okay. That being the case, what concrete steps would need to be taken to make that metric happen?
That frankly is pathetic.
Oh.
But alarmingly, Latinos represent 3.1% of executive leaders among the insurance companies surveyed. And the job category which Latinos are most highly represented is administrative support. Again, much work needs to be done.
What's wrong with being administrative support? Those jobs are what, irrelevant or shameful or something? Okay. Again, what do you want to have happen?
There should be no reason that Latinos are not better represented across the ranks.
It's not representation. You are there because you are representing your constituents. You were voted into that. Okay, but you want representation. How?
So then I looked at the investments of assets.
Mm-hmm.
And when we looked at those, the numbers just get even worse.
Oh.
And I wanted to focus on investments because, as the chairwoman of the full committee said, it's all about wealth building. It's about ownership. It's about making sure that there's meaningful inclusion and meaningful diversity. So, Ms. Domingo, I wanted to ask you first, since it looks like AllState, from best I can tell, is probably doing more than others, although you two have a lot of work to do. What commitment do you have in making sure that with your investment bankers and your investors and investor relations and all the asset management for AllState, that you do include minorities and women and the full spectrum?
No, you asked about Latinos, specifically Latinos, the full spectrum. Why'd you bother highlighting Latinos if you're just talking about gender? She already answered that in her opening statement, and all her answers to questions thus far, she has addressed that general concern of yours. Why didn't you ask her, what are you doing to increase Latino representation at AllState? Why suddenly take this U-turn at the end of your question? That doesn't make any sense. You just, I mean, even if this entire thing was legitimate in your question, you just gave her the biggest out to both not answer your question and answer your question at the same time. Unless she chooses to actually address your first portion of your question, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question, Ms. Garcia. You actually hit on one of the things that AllState identified just this year. A lot of our focus, as you probably have read, is primarily with our Black and African American employees, our leadership, as well as our female leadership. Once we took a better look at our data, we realized that you're right. We don't have kind of equitable practices or equitable numbers around our Hispanic leaders and our Hispanic employees. And so we actually have now a focus on that going in.
What does that mean? What does that look like? What are you doing on the ground? I would love to get an answer to this.
Our relationship with our investors, our board of directors, as well as the CEO, Tom Wilson, is pretty critical. While my supervisor is the CHRO, I have regular and ad hoc conversations with the board, the investors, and the CEO specifically around these topics.
And what conclusions have you come to? What actions are you taking?
And ensure that we have diverse candidate slates, diversity of
Let's get to
conversations.
the investments. Do you do business with asset managers from minority and
Yes.
women-owned businesses?
Yes, we do.
Is that your first consideration? Does that sound a little shady?
At what level?
I don't have that information readily available. I can get that for you after this and
Okay,
provide it
and
for the
and the number
report.
that you cited, 470 million by 2030, that would be 470 million of what? What was the total number? I mean, what percent of the total number does 47 million represent?
I don't have that information readily available. I'll have to get that for you after
You
the
don't have that
report.
either? All right.
Mhm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, we're hearing loud and clear that we have work to do to make sure that the insurance industry reflects the diversity of our country. As the member of Congress representing Atlanta, where we unfortunately lead the nation in the racial wealth gap, and as a Black working mom, I know that starts with removing barriers to advancement for people who look like me. This year, I passed the SEDS Act to ensure that childcare is used as a strategy for regional economic development. When we have adequate childcare, we break down barriers for women and people of color to advance into executive level positions. Ms. Domingo, how can the insurance industry be part of community level efforts to increase access to care-based services? And what impact do you see these community level efforts having on increasing workforce diversity and inclusion?
Childcare? All right. I had not considered childcare as being a diversity, equity, and inclusion thing, except for the gender side of things if you're talking about working moms. Because as I asked before, why aren't there more women at top jobs in these companies and everything else? Well, maybe they're raising their families. Maybe they decided to have children. Maybe they decided to take time off from working to raise their kids. Maybe they had intentions of coming back after a few months of raising their kids, but then decided against it. Maybe they figured out that with their spouse, they could, still afford to go forward with only one income. I don't know. But okay, childcare. Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. That is an absolute criticality for companies like AllState to have strong relationships with community organizations like the one that you're talking about. But I think the one thing that they need to do as well, insurance companies like AllState, we also ensure that our benefits are best in class, so that our paternity and maternity benefits are also matching that.
Paternity benefits? What? There are men involved in this too? Wow.
Of best in class or world class organizations, and then coincide with what community services are able to provide. One of the things as well is that a very large percentage of our population is now hybrid or primarily working from home, which for our working mom and working dad population, similar to myself, it makes it much more accessible to do a great job at Allstate and continue to persevere at home.
Yeah, great. Okay, so what are you doing? Best in class. Like, okay, well, what does that look like? If you don't know what your child care services are, that's fine. Best in class, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Thank you. And we know that we
Okay.
also have a great deal of work to do to ensure that the LGBTQ plus individuals have equitable opportunities throughout the financial services industry.
Yes. So what are you doing to inquire of your potential recruits about their sex lives? I am always, of everything else, the one thing that I'm just so morbidly curious about is how that conversation takes place in the hiring process. Where on the application do you write in your personal sexual preferences or lifestyle? Now, how does that work at the interview table when you're trying to figure out how you're going to hire for more LGBT individuals? I would love to be a fly on the wall for where that part is in the course of the hiring process.
I've introduced the PRIDE Act, which requires federal banking and finance agencies to expand the mission of their offices of women and minority inclusion to also support the inclusion of LGBTQ plus individuals.
Again, how do you suggest that conversation go? Where in the conversation do you inquire of someone's sex life in order to check off a box? Does that sound appropriate to you under any circumstance that doesn't have anything to do with the porn industry? What seriously, how do you expect that to go? Maybe there's an answer. Okay, maybe the poverty of my imagination prevents me from thinking of it, obviously. There must be a way, aside from just directly asking. And if you ask and you get an answer, how do you verify that?
Ms. Domingo, how would passing this bill ensure federal agencies are better positioned to collect diversity data for LGBTQ plus individuals and take action to support the inclusion of these individuals in the workforce?
Yes. How do you propose to inquire of your employees, either future or current, who they like to sleep with? And how do you verify the accuracy of that claim? I mean, if somebody says, I'm a woman, or somebody says, I'm a minority, generally speaking, it's not really that far to tell. But on this one, I'm curious. Tell me.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Williams. While I can't speak to the bill particularly, what I can say is that this would actually align with the things that AllState is actually doing around our LGBTQ plus population and looking at that data.
What are you doing? And how do you know? When did you find out what your employees like to do in their free time in their bedrooms? Why is that relevant to you? What does that have to do with their ability to do their jobs in an insurance company? Please. Oh man, at one point in my life, I swear, I would love to be in a position to ask these guys these kind of questions and hold them to account for answering them and not pad them with a whole bunch of other gobbledygook buzzwords, escape hatches. Just ask them direct and see what they have to say. If they prevaricate, if they give a bunch of nonsense, fine, if that's their answer, right? But I want to at least give them a direct question and get a direct answer.
We are in the process of asking more clarifying questions around sexual orientation and gender identity data, tracking this, reporting this, and using this as behavior changes for our entire organization.
Okay, so you're keeping track of who people are sleeping with and what they like to do in their bedrooms? How? I mean, setting aside the ethical nature of even that being a part of the consideration in the first place, I just want to know the mechanisms being employed to determine these things. Where in the process of hiring or promotion, retention, whatever, where does that occur that you determine someone's sexual orientation? Where? How? Thank you, Tyrannus Alexandrius Tremierlich. The line on the application that says sex is where? Yeah, sex with a question mark. What kind of sex? Checkbox. Yeah. It's like.
And moving that work forward. So I can only imagine that the work that you're doing would align with our current practices.
What practices? What? Current practices of what? What are your practices? Is it that scorecard thing again? Again, how does that conversation come up?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if we hope to not only increase diversity in the financial services sector, but also empower diverse individuals to own successful businesses and build wealth so that we can continue to close that racial wealth gap, we have to be sure that insurance companies use diverse suppliers. So Ms. Domingo, back to you again. What efforts have been successful in increasing contracting with minority or women-owned business enterprises? And what recommendations do you have for insurance companies to increase their partnerships with diverse suppliers?
Well, obviously, racially and gender discrimination. What other answer could you possibly expect? We look at it. We look at a vendor, and we Google their website, and we take a look at their leadership team. Do the images of their leadership team match our preferred color palette? Yes or no? If the answer is no, we go on to the next one. What other answer could there be? Thank you, Chicago Mike. Is it me or is Miss Domingo a master at word salad? Where's my bingo card? Yeah, no, she's... It's actually kind of surprising to me. I mean, maybe it's because she's in front of Congress or something. She's not necessarily in front of colleagues or fellow travelers, as she was at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce summit. But she's not being nearly as blunt and straightforward here as she was there, which I guess That I do understand that. I guess I can understand that on a psychological level. But knowing what we know about her real answers, her less filtered answers from last week's show, this is very telling. It's very telling to already know something of what she actually means when here she's couching her language.
Thank you again for the question, Ms. Williams. Again, as we mentioned earlier, and I definitely would underline what you're saying is that spend with diverse suppliers is not just about spending the money. It's actually about investing in their work and investing in their businesses.
On the basis of their race or gender.
One of the best practices that we do with our procurement team is ensuring that each of our diverse suppliers has a mentor on the inside as well as suppliers on the outside who are working with them, ensuring that their practices are strong and improved. We also have equitable practices that we pull through with our procurement teams, ensuring that we just don't have, minority suppliers that are kind of fending for themselves. But a lot of it, quite frankly, is actually a paradigm shift to see that this isn't just, again, in spending for diverse suppliers, but actually, as you mentioned, shifting the wealth gap of our nation, which is a higher call.
Oh, she is so good. It almost sounds like she's saying something, doesn't it? It almost sounds like she's saying something meaningful, and it's nonsense. It's nonsense. She's asked a how question, and she just goes off into la la land, where the answer is as plain as you could possibly make it. The answer is right there in the question. There is no other way to ensure that you are servicing minority or female-owned vendors or businesses unless those are the elements by which you discriminate at the very front of the process. There's no other way around that. That's it. And it's just a given. It's just accepted. Oh, well, yeah. So how many people are being excluded? Not on the basis of their business model, not on the basis of their success rate, not on the basis of their product, their services, whatever, but first and foremost on what they look like. That's what AllState is doing. That's what they have to be doing. To take a question like that and just wash over it like that's all it is. And again, I know. I bet here's the thing. In my secret heart of hearts, one day I want there to be some civil rights expert, like civil rights law expert, who happens upon one of my streams, listens to one of my questions or complaints, and has a ready answer. A ready answer that's not just some kind of biased nonsense, but something that is founded in law, precedent or otherwise, that says that this is okay. That the obvious implications of these questions, of these policies, of these declarations by these companies and these politicians and educators and on and on and on, somehow aren't a violation of the things that people fought for 60 years ago, died for over the course of this country's history, and supposedly still believe in today. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a relic. Maybe I was taught incorrectly about what it was that I was watching when I was a kid, seeing the old black and white videos and footage of people being shot with fire hoses in the streets in protests over integration, seeing segregationists as popular politicians in the South, seeing the kind of horrors that occurred when you start assessing people on the basis of their race. Water fountains. I don't need to say anything else. I said water fountains. And yet here we are. If you look a particular way, you get access to that water fountain or that job or that opportunity through AllState. If you look a particular way, you don't. You have to go over there at best. What's the difference? Fundamentally, what is the difference? And if there is a difference under law, by all means, let me know. If I've been ranting and raving for the last 6 years over nothing, over something that's easily explicable, and you can point it out to me in law, federally, statewide, or otherwise, fine. Okay. And you know what? When that day comes, if that day comes, I will do a whole live stream video going over what I've learned and correcting myself going back 6 years. I won't delete anything. I won't revise anything. It'll be all there for reference purposes or otherwise. But I will apologize for being off my rocker this entire time, and likely my entire adult life, as my understanding of what we're supposed to be moving towards as a country, as a society, was completely wrong. I'd love to hear it. I think this is almost done now. We've only got about a minute left.
Thank you, Ms. Domingo. I work on this committee every day to make sure that I am centering the people who sent me here to serve, those people in Georgia's 5th Congressional District.
Were any of those people white? If any of those people were white, how are you serving them by encouraging people to discriminate on the basis of race against them? Right. I mean, what principle do you have in this case? Okay.
And unfortunately, Atlanta leads the nation in the racial wealth gap. So we all have work to do and an obligation to make sure we're addressing that. So thank you, Madam Chair, for this hearing today as we continue to do the work to address the racial wealth gap in this country.
The work.
Thank you, Congresswoman
yield back.
Williams. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's it. As far as the appearances of Ms. Domingo in this hearing, that's all. That's all there was. As far as I could find. There might have been some side questions or something, but that was the bulk where she was giving a long answer to a question directed at her by the politician. So there you go. And now you can compare and contrast her answers and information here with what she confessed very readily amongst friends and colleagues in last week's stream. Yeah, I know I asked it at length twice now, but I've asked it several times in the past. If there is something that makes this okay under not only law, but just under the principles of what we're supposed to be working towards in this country, let me know. Put it in the comments, tweet it at me, show me the case law, show me the loophole or the codified allowance for this to take place the way that they're talking. Because I can't understand how in the halls of Congress, the place where all of the laws went through at one point or another, where the Civil Rights Act had to pass through at one point, and the amendments thereto that tried to protect people against discrimination in the workplace, how they so freely, casually, and gleefully start complimenting each other on their efforts to discriminate people on the basis of their race and gender in business. Am I just... Anyway, I'll take a minute here for some comments. P-Dog Knight is in the chat. I bet none of these people run insurance companies. On the congressional side of things, probably not. Our main speaker doesn't run an insurance company. She's just in charge of diversity and inclusion. Oh, sorry, inclusion, diversity, and equity, because they want to be different by putting them in a different order or something. Also, guys, if you don't know about P-Dog Knight, look up the P-Dog Knight channel on YouTube and Rumble, and check out P-Dog's morning show, weekdays, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern, where he goes over the news of the day and has some fun talking with the chat and going over what's happening around the world. There you go. Plug for P-Dog. What else we got here? Tyrannus Alexandrius, there isn't a racial wealth gap. There is a work ethic gap and victimhood mentality. When I hear about a wealth gap, I always go back in my mind to the gender wage gap, which is like, here's the entire bucket of everything men make working full time, or everything men make, period, in the country in a year's time. And here's the full bucket of what women make. There's a disparity there. Obviously, there's an inequity. That is the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis. Without actually looking at any other controls, any other factors, you just look at the raw number and say, oh, there's a difference. That must be sexism. That must be racism. That must be whatever. Put your ism in the middle, and that's your explanation. So when they say a racial wealth gap, I'm sure that since the population demographics in this country are not evenly split, there is a wealth gap if you're just looking at the giant buckets. But is there anything else that might be causing that? I'm only suspicious because I was told over and over again about the gender wage gap, and it wasn't true when you actually looked down and dug into the numbers. So, yeah. P-Dog, I just did a stream appealing a copyright claim, then I came here. Yeah, I saw you, I think I posted on Twitter how you got stream got zapped by like NBC or something. Yeah, what is fair use again? Right? You put on, you take a tiny little screen of something off to the side. You've got a big video of yourself. You've got a whole bunch of like a background and logos and numbers going by, and somehow that's not transformative. Somehow you're still liable for that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense under law. Let's see. And Lexi Mads is giving some props to Keever Dam. Keeve, you're the queen of all moderators. Oh. Yes, Keever Dam has become the mama bear of the scribe cave. Oh no. Oh, I have just opened up a can of worms saying that. I'm not going to go any further. Those of you who are veterans, you know exactly what kind of jokes to start making. I'm not going to go any further than that one. That was bad. Sorry, Keever Dam. I own it. I opened that door. I deserve everything I get for that one. Let's see. Who else is here real quick? What's this? Parody Bayar. IRL so sad. Me love you long in a time of horror, cruel gods, great heroes, Hercules. What? Parody Bayar. What happened? Is that referencing something in? Also, P-Dog, as an internet lawyer with no legal experience, you're right, Scribe. Yeah. I need a lawyer, dog. Yeah. Okay. Yep. There it is. Dr. Functional. Is it a turtle cave? No, it's not. It is not. I gotta find. She's Queen of the Moon. There you go. Queen of Moonbase. Queen of the Moonbase. There you go. She sits in oversight over the Moonbase. Yeah, the lore of the Moonbase expands once more. Keever Dam is Queen of the Moon. There you are. Queen of the Moon, Keever Dam. Queen with a K. Kween, Keever Dam. Queen Deep, Keever Dam. With that, everybody, I'm going to call it here. Thank you for joining me for this little oddball stream, following up on last week's stream. I don't know if I'll ever look at AllState again, either in real life or on a stream or a show or a video, but you never know. I'll keep my eyes open in the news for such things. If you'd like to hear more from me, well, special. This coming Tuesday, I plan, speaking of follow-ups, doing a part 2 of my look at that podcast from the National Association of Independent Schools on their strategies for introducing DEI into the classroom. Some interesting implications and confessions came up at the end of part 1. I'm wondering if we'll have more of those in part 2. So keep a watch on my Twitter for information on that for Tuesday. And then, of course, as usual, on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can find me here for another installment of TED Excellence, where we'll go over another off-brand TED Talk for education and fun. I call it EUN, Edufun. There you go, Edufun. That's right, Anyway, everybody, thank you for joining me again. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved, so friendly, and just so much of a family here that you have very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the GoFundMe's pinned at the top of the chat box, thank you so much for your generosity. We really do appreciate it. Be sure to check out P-Dog Night. If you haven't already, check him out, subscribe, follow him on Twitter and Rumble and YouTube, and check out his show tomorrow, I hope, at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. And with that, everybody, hope you have a good rest of your Sunday. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend and week ahead of you. I hope you are all safe and well. If you are not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.